Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about my experience as a new player coming back to Magic earlier this year to the Commander format. Previously, in about middle school for me, which is quite a long time at this point, I'd say like 15 years ago, my brother did teach me how to play 60 card Magic, which is at that time was just Magic. There was no, if there was Commander, it was coming about and it wasn't nearly as big. So really all they had was 60 cards, which I consider standard. There's multiple ways you can play 60 cards. I think Pioneer is one of them, but from what I understand, I just play standard. I just call it standard. I know there's Pauper also, which is pretty much all commons, and if I'm not mistaken, you play it as 60 cards. So there is different formats for 60 cards, but I'm just going to consider it standard for simplicity's sake. This, to me, is the way you're supposed to learn Magic. It's fast, 20 minutes, I think is almost generous in time frame. A lot of times it's only about 15 minutes. Maybe when you're first starting it's like 20, maybe 30 minutes. It depends on what deck you're playing. You're playing control, aggro, mid-range. You're playing a lot of these deck styles that eventually lead you to learn the game. And you'll see a lot of the cards over and over again, especially if you're playing with a friend, you'll see their decks. If you're playing in I would say a very big environment, you're getting a large card pool. You'll eventually learn maybe some of the meta decks. You'll maybe learn some of the more casual decks. But you'll start to see a lot of the same cards because everyone likes to play generally the better cards of certain sets. That's just how it works. So you'll start seeing a lot of the same cards. You'll start learning how your deck works, which lets you understand the game better, keywords better, and allows you to essentially basically a 60 card deck, you're only going to play with about 10, maybe at most 15 unique cards, which allows you to get a general gist of what those cards do, what those keywords do. So when you see those keywords again, you'll be able to recognize it, or maybe even some of the cards in someone else's deck from these. That gives me to my next point, which is when I went back to Magic, at least of the two shops I've been to, 60 card basically standard formats don't exist, and if they exist, you have to go out of your way to go find someone to play with. Which leads me to sealed, constructed, pre-constructed decks, which is basically pre-releases. Now this is the only other format I've seen in the two shops that I go to that's actually played. This is whenever a new set's coming out. So for instance, I did Final Fantasy and I did Aether Drift. So we have both of these. Or not Aether Drift, my bad. Edge of Eternities. I came in during Aether Drift, which I did not like that set because I just remember it being more of like a fantasy, dark fantasy setting for Magic. Aether Drift was not hitting home for me on the art. I don't think it did for most people, and frankly, the cards in it weren't even that good. So I came back on kind of a rough time of Magic, in my opinion. But sealed, pre-constructed, or pre-release is honestly way harder than draft, or it is draft at the end of the day. You have 6 packs ish from the these things, and you have to make a deck out of 40 cards with it, get your lands, and then go play people. I'm not really that good, and even if I was good, you're still a lot of RNG dependence on essentially what you can build. That's whenever deck building skill comes in for these. I just think that this is the hardest format you're ever going to have a new player play, so don't play this. So essentially at this point, in my brain, the only way you're going to play this game at like a card shop, at least in my experience, is if you're playing basically pre-release, sealed, or you're playing Commander. Commander is a little bit easier than draft because you don't have to actually draft your cards. You can essentially just buy a pre-con, play it, and just learn it from there. This doesn't help though. This doesn't help. You have maybe 60 to 70 cards per deck, which is including your deck and then the other 3 people, and then apparently you can go up to 5. I think 5 is very egregious. I think that is a long time you're going to sit down, especially for a new player. That is grueling to go through a 5-player pot, I feel like. So you have basically a decks on a table that have 60 to 70 cards, probably ranging in power scale depending on if someone understands you're a new player or not. You have no idea what half these cards do in your deck. You for sure don't know what the cards are doing in other people's decks. You don't even know about anything. And you're going to see stuff that's counters. You're going to see stuff that's basically people putting a bunch of minions out, a bunch of 1/1s, doubling season. You're going to see Smothering Tides. You're going to see Rhystic Studies. You're going to see all these freaking cards that are gonna just make no sense to you. You're just gonna be sitting there like, oh, this is that's really good. Some cool cards you got going there. You know what I'm saying? But you're sitting there and you don't know what you're doing. You're looking at cards like, as far as you're considering, you're just watching people play solitaire with cards you don't even understand what's going on. And the keywords in your deck, you're trying to figure out, and you're trying to figure out anything you can do with your cards where you're getting freaking smacked. So what happens is when you're new, no one targets you, and if they target you, the other people will beat them up. That doesn't help out the case, because what happens is at the end of the game, your deck is generally underpowered, and you just get smacked in the face and don't know what you just died by. The person that's, raises their hand, goes GG's, and you're like, why is it GG's? They're like, well, basically I have these 5-card combo that basically puts infinite mana in my hand, and it does, because I have infinite mana, now I can basically infinitely charge this guy for like infinite damage, and now you're dead. Everyone's dead. So this deck, in my opinion, this format is not good for new players. And even if someone teaches you it, it's going to be about 4 or 5 games before you really understand what's going on. But by the time you understand what's going on, you realize the pre-cons kind of suck. So you're going to start buying cards. And this is kind of my issue with this. Okay, if you go here, all these are, I just typed in literally starter decks MTG. This is kind of a little bit going back to the 60 card decks here. None of these, or very little of these, will be in a card shop. You won't see it like an actual Duel Link 60 card decks. You'll see a ton of commander decks. It's like, this is like push to the forefront. I actually had this one, and this one was not that good at all. And I have full experience with this deck. That was my first deck I came back to, was this Goad deck. And I can tell you one thing, it was kind of cool when you get the commander out there, but it's like, it doesn't work, and these decks are highly they're underpowered severely. And the issue is once you understand that your decks are super underpowered and you're seeing what other people can do, you're going to go spend about $200 to $300 getting a good deck together. And don't give me the whole, oh, you can go build a good deck for like $50, $60. Okay, sure. Until you lose with that $50, $60 deck, and then you're like, well, I'm just going to go buy the good cards because you don't want to lose, right? So like, you're sitting over here and probably not the most expensive format, because there is vintage, there is standard, which I understand is generally more expensive because you need those staples to actually play the game at a higher level. But even in a casual setting on a commander format, you want to like win, or at least have a good chance at like doing something on the board instead of sitting there for like basically half an hour doing nothing. So you're going to want to have cards that can destroy people's stuff, relatively easy stuff that can't be countered, and all that stuff adds up. Like, you're like $5 cards, $10 cards. Maybe you have like 1 or 2, $30, $40 cards that like are your engine setters and everything like that. So essentially the game becomes it's very expensive at the end of the day. And I understand that's a very consistent thing to do with all these card games, but even in Commander, a casual format, it gets very expensive. And there is CDH, I know that. I frankly think competitive Commander is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of, and I don't even need, I haven't played it. I just think, in my opinion, it's ridiculous. From my understanding, is that you basically make infinite combos and you shut people out of the game instantly. Just go play Yu-Gi-Oh! Why are you wasting your time with a 100 card deck? Just go play Yu-Gi-Oh! They do that for fun. But this gets into my second point, where Commander is a casual format for casuals, but they treat it like it's not casual. Okay, here's my thing. You can't destroy lands. That's the unwritten rule in basically local card shop Commander. You can't destroy lands, and if you target someone before you can target someone, you become the target of the whole table. That's the unwritten rule. It just is what it is. So what this leads to is you either make a board wipe that can destroy all lands, like Armageddon or Blood Moon, which turns all your lands into red, or if you have to wait that time frame, which is generally about 3 or 4 turns before you target someone, that's kind of the unwritten rule, at least in my opinion, the vibes of the table. If you target someone before then, you become the target. So what a lot of people do is they'll wait. But if everybody waits, then everybody gets their engines going. Everybody gets their insane cards out. Everybody gets all their nutty stuff out. So essentially what ends up happening is these games wind up being a literal solitaire fest with 4 people where basically everybody's trying to basically defend their board while they're allowing no one to attack, because if you attack, they probably have counter spells or everybody's going to gang up on you. So essentially what happens is if you can't kill everybody in one turn, at most 2 people on the table, you can't kill them in one turn, chances are you're going to get killed the next go around. That's in general how this game operates in the casual setting, which I think is just a bunch of baloney, because it's supposed to be a casual game, but it's not casual because no one wants to lose. So at the end of the day, it's like you're playing a casual game that's innately competitive, but you're trying not. It's stupid. So again, this kind of goes back into why it's kind of annoying to even play this format to begin with. This, actually, I'm going to go over my deck. This is my commander, by the way. Maelstrom Wanderer. Kind of insane, honestly, that this is an older card. It's made in 2016. So basically, when I play this card, all my creatures get haste, and I get Cascade. Cascade means when I basically exile cards from the top of my deck until I hit anything that is at its mana value and 1 less. So it's 8, so it has to be 7 or less, and I can cast it. And it is a cast. That's very specific, and I've looked at the ruling. So you would do that, and then you would do it again. Depending on what you hit, can extend your turn, maybe another turn. It can also basically cascade in another creature that has Cascade, which then cascades off that. You can hit crazy combos off this. It's a really fun deck, super aggressive. The only drawback is you have to get to 7 mana. That's essentially what happens, and I like to think of it as you basically spend to win after that, because you can just recycle this dude over and over again, and once I get this card out, I become the #1 target, as you would expect, because at that point I'm basically dumping my whole deck on the board and you have to stop me in 2 turns. But the reason why I consider this a casual deck is because you have 4 or 5 turns to stop me, because it costs 7 mana. So I'm going to go a little bit back to why I'm explaining. This is kind of in general the current state of Magic and why it's kind of just, I want to say not fun. I just don't think the game is actually a game of skill anymore. It's just a game of numbers. And what I mean is this. This is a good card in pre-modern. So this isn't a 60 card deck. This is my brother actually showed me this, and we're playing pre-modern online. This sucks horribly in Modern Magic. You would not play this card to save your life in Modern Magic because of its echo. Basically, you have to pay this thing's 5 mana on upkeep every turn, or else it gets killed. But when it comes into play, you put 4 scroll tokens into play, and they're 1/1, and all scrolls get +1/+1. And if you're playing in a 1v1 format, your health is 20, not 40, so that actually can do a lot, and you have a lot of blockers, a lot of attackers, and even if you don't pay its cost, you still have those 4 scroll tokens. So essentially, you're going really high up on card advantage with this card, which is a big deal. Because when you're playing in these older formats, resource management is a way, way bigger deal than what it is in Commander and anything in Modern. And I'm getting into that because this card, like I said, it allows you to get basically 5 dudes out at 1 cost, even though it's 5 and you have to upkeep at 5. But there's a lot of cards like this, and this is considered a great card. Maelstrom Wanderer is borderline not even that good. And it has Cascade, which basically brings out dudes from your deck. You have to build your deck around that, obviously. This card is good. This is a 7 cost, but basically what a tally does is when it comes out, it cascades off your opponent's deck, and it doesn't matter what basically mana value it is. You can just cast whatever they hit that's not a land. Obviously, that's broken. That's really freaking good. But if you look at it, this takes basically a structured deck. You have to understand how your deck works. You have to basically logically think of how you're going to play this card to make it effective. Because if you don't pay this upkeep cost, you're not going to have that buff. Your scrolls are going to be there, but your buff's gone. You play a tally, this is brain dead. You don't think, you just win. That's what the difference is between Commander, especially Modern Commander, between these older 60 card decks. When you built decks around this is a busted card. This is still a busted card. This is essentially a cascade. If you have less creatures than your opponent, you cascade your library, which is crazy. But this is also referring to everybody at the table. So it's almost a downside. And this is the thing, is there's a lot of cards in these older games that you would hit yourself, including them, or it would be like a very, like there would be a drawback. And this is another one. Each player sacrifices X lands, where X is basically the summoning cost you're going to pay for this. They don't have that anymore. If this was written in today, it would be, first off, that statement wouldn't even be there, because no one's going to hit your lands. But it would do X damage to a creature, and that would be it. That would be the whole thing. But there's a lot of cards, especially like this one. This one's another one. So when this card comes into play, sacrifice any number of creatures with a power of 12 or more, or bury this card. That bury just means kill it. What you're saying is there's cost to these cards. It's a one cost. So that's the trade-off. It's a trade-off. You have to pay its cost to get it out there. There's no trade-off. This is just an up, up, up. This is a common. Literally a common from Edge of Eternities. When this artifact enters or leaves the battlefield, draw a card. And hold up. That's a 2 cost. So you're telling me you're going neutral card advantage to a positive 1 off a 2 drop. And it also has an effect where it sacrifices itself for 2 and puts a stun counter on a monster. Like, this is what I'm saying. This is a common. This has 0 drawback. This is a all gas, no break card versus even a, I don't know. This is like, there's just a lot of cards in here. I just don't have like an example off the top of my head. But like going back to this one would have you sacrifice your land on top of basically paying the 2 red. You would pay X, and you would pay it by discarding a random card from your hand, brother. And then you would say each player sacrifices X lands to where X is the random card sacrificed, and it deals that much damage to 1 creature. This card literally lets you draw 2 cards for free, and on top of that, you can sack it to guarantee a card and put a stun counter on something. So it's like 3 things it can do for 2 mana, common. It's just all up. And this is the issue with not just Commander, but the overall portion or like state of Magic. Nothing punishes the player. So when you're stalemating and no one's attacking each other in Commander, what's essentially happening is your field is getting to the point where nothing can touch you, while everybody else is getting to the point where nothing can touch them, because these cards are all upsides. There's no drawback to how these cards work. If you had these pre-modern cards in Commander decks, I don't even know if Commander would even be like a fun format to play. So I understand why you would have less of these cards and more of these cards in it. But because of this also makes the format of Standard not fun either, because now you have a lot of these cards running around in Standard where it's no longer you think in Standard either. So you don't have to think. You just win. You just keep winning, and you keep winning, and it's dumb. I'm not saying it's not fun. It's just dumb. It's like the game isn't a game anymore. You might as well just roll, I don't know. It's a numbers game. It really is. What I mean by that is it's nothing more than playing, I want to say, like, I've been playing Mega Bonk. I've been playing Risk of Rain 2. These roguelikes. They're all about numbers. All you're doing is you're getting items in those games to increase your damage output and survivability. That is all Magic is. It's all about increasing your damage output and making sure you don't die. And it always has been that, but before you had to actually think of how to do that. In this game, and now, you don't do that. You just friggin' every card is good. Every card, I would say, is playable. And the worst card in the friggin' set is just going to be probably a vanilla card that's like a 4 or 5. That's considered bad. If you looked at anything in pre-modern, you have a vanilla card is 4 or 5 and less than like 4 mana. That's like probably one of the best cards of the entire set. Just because off the premise of its stat line and its mana cost. I'm going to stop, but thank you for listening. Have a good day.